So revolutionary theories and galaxy brainness describe the content of their discourse. Pseudo-profound BS describes the form of their discourse. It has language that is cognitively easy to process, superficially appears to be profound, upon analysis turns out to be trite, meaningless, contradictory, or tautological. So Dennis and Jordan Peterson are pretty good with
The
this.
idea that you have to journey to the darkest abyss to free the spirit of your father. But there's a reason for it, and it has to do with the which is that you can't what you're being or withstanding, and those are without, if you hide away from any of the things about life that are terrible but true, and the reason you can't without doing that is that only necessity will force that out of you, and I mean that from the perspective of learning. If you go work in a palliative care ward, you'll learn the psychological strategies necessary, the steps. You'll become more informed. But it's deeper than that even. We know now from a biological, if you put yourself in new situations, in new and challenging, that new genes turn on in your nervous system and code for new proteins that produce new neurological structures. And so you can't even be what you are fully biologically unless you expose yourself to everything that you can expose yourself to as you.
Wow, what a galaxy brain. Revolutionary theories just powerful. Okay, so I'd give Prager a 3 out of 5. There are some examples from his book, Think a Second Time. Nothing in the history of the human race has caused more evil than the belief in the importance. Right, so the belief in the importance of blood is just the of genetic altruism. People prefer, those they are related to. American values have universal applicability, and they are eminently exportable. So someone like myself would see American values or Japanese values or Canadian values or Russian values or Australian values as the product of a particular people and transmitting their genes in a particular environment. Every child is a blank slate. So Dennis Prager advocates the proposition nation, a country that's primarily united by shared beliefs rather than being a. He advocates the proposition family, parents and children who are united by their shared beliefs. Says, as a father, my purpose is not to pass on my seed, but to pass on my value. Dennis Prager does not believe the family is a big deal when compared to the importance of. So Dennis Prager said, traditional life in Europe became, you are defined by your family, but that's not the way it ought to be. You are defined by you, not by your family. People think family is a big deal. It's not. It's a big deal. Who? Right, so Prager views that we are primarily individuals rather than members of families, extended families, tribes, and nations. This is a very modern and liberal perspective. It's the opposite perspective of a great intellectual like John J. Mearsheimer in his great 2018 book, The Great Delusion, Liberal Dreams and International Realities. So there, John Mearsheimer wrote, my view is that we are profoundly social beings from the start to the finish of our lives, and that individualism is of secondary. Liberalism downplays the social nature of human beings to the point of almost ignoring it, treating people as atomistic actors. Political liberalism is an ideology that is individualistic, assigns great importance to the concept of inalienable. This concern for rights is the basis of liberalism's universalism. Everyone on the planet has the same inherent rights. This is what motivates liberal states to pursue ambitious foreign policies like invading Afghanistan and Iraq. So public and scholarly discourse about liberalism since World War II has placed enormous emphasis on human rights have defined the most elevated aspirations of social movements and political entities. They evoke hope, provoke action. Now, from a traditional perspective, from my perspective, Mearsheimer's perspective, humans do not operate as lone wolves. Humans are born into families, into tribes, into social groups, into societies that then shape their identities well before they can assert their individuals usually develop strong attachments to their group. They're frequently willing to make great sacrifices for their family. Humans are tribal at their core. The main reason for our social nature is that the best way for a person to survive is to be embedded in a family, a society, a community, a tribe, and to cooperate with fellow members rather than act alone. Remember, I talked about that Netflix series on apes in Africa, and when the apes got separated from the group, they would often be attacked and killed by other apes. Safest place is life within the tribe. Despite its elevated ranking, reason is the least important of the ways that we determine our preferences. It's less important than social. Humans have a long childhood in which they are protected and nurtured by their families, ideally, and their surrounding society, and so they are exposed to intense socialization. They're only beginning to develop their critical faculties. They're not equipped to think for themselves. By the time an individual reaches the point where his reasoning skills are developed, such as age 25, his family, and his society, his community, his religion have already imposed an enormous value infusion on him. So the individual is born with innate sentiments. They're not born a blank slate. So people have very limited choice in formulating a moral code because so much of their thinking about right and wrong comes from inborn attitudes and socialization. So Dennis Prager's whole agenda is reworking people's moral. Reality is people have very limited choice in formulating them. So if John Mearsheimer, and I believe he is, then Dennis Prager is just another guru spouting pseudo-professor. And so this idea that a country or a family should primarily be held together on the grounds of, right, that we should love our parents or our siblings or our children because we agree with their views on the Constitution, that's, and what best predicts, lifetime outcomes, right? Genetics, right? Nature, not nurture. It's the main how much money people make, how well people perform at school. Dennis says, I don't know what I've learned morally that I didn't know in 5th grade. I can't think of a single moral insight. So he hasn't learned anything morally since 5th grade. Then it says the word for servant, the word for slave is the same in the Torah, which is why Jews don't like to be servants because they think it is slavery. Did you ever meet a Jewish waiter? Jews don't wait. Jews don't want to serve anybody. Right? That's ridiculous, right? If you're going to make money, you're going to have. Dennis realized early on that his own instincts are simply identical to God's Torah. Right? Dennis's instincts and God's instincts are identical. And it blew my mind, says Dennis. My natural mode of thinking was the Torah's mode of thinking. Right? Right? His way of thinking was the same as the Torah's. Right? That's his man. Can you imagine what that to realize that you and God are on the same wavelength? That your thinking and God's thinking mesh?
I don't remember when, but it was early on. I said to myself,
wow,
your instincts are identical to the Torah's. And it blew my mind.
And remember, God wrote the Torah. So when Dennis says his instincts are identical, saying that his instincts are identical to God, can you imagine what a revelation that would be as a lad to realize that you and God have the same?
My natural motive was the Torah's mode of thinking.
Wow.
And that's why I feel such a moral obligation to get.
Thank you, Dennis.
Because if you take those 5 books, you will think morally clearly. You will think clearly about everything.
And you'll be so much happier.
Yeah, well, you could testify.
Oh
to
my
that.
God. I mean, society will run better. Your life will run better. Personally, you will feel enriched and fulfilled and happier. I really think, and I know it sounds sort of like I'm hyperbolizing to say it, I think it's the answer to everything.
Everything.
Oh, I know it's the answer
to
everything. That's why it's frustrating
Everything.
that it isn't out there more.
I know.
As much as it's out there, my biggest is it's not out there more.
He's talking about his own Torah teachings because his instincts are identical with the Torah's. Like his instincts then are identical with the author of the Torah, who is God. Dennis Prager's perspective. His instincts are identical with God's. He has walked through his life with the identical instincts as the creator and sustainer of the universe.
This is the answer, or even